Namaste and welcome. It's Rishi here from meditatewithrishi.com, and today we are beginning to explore a really important topic: the different types of yoga. So if you are somebody that is on the spiritual path, whether new or you've been on it for some time, this is going to be very important and interesting for you to understand and actually deepen your spiritual practice or practices. Okay, so before we get into the types of yoga, I want to say a couple of things. So the first one is that in this video we will be touching upon the different types of yoga, and in the upcoming videos I will go into them in more detail to deepen your understanding. And also, before we begin to look at the different types, it's going to help us to understand what is yoga. What do we mean by this, essentially? Because in the modern world today, when most people hear the word yoga, they think of the physical postures and the breathing exercises, because this is, it has taken the world by storm. In every big city, there are studios where people are practicing the physical aspect of yoga, which is great. But actually, it is a very tiny fraction of what yoga actually is. So if we take a step back and look at what is the aim of yoga, why are we doing any of these practices, even the physical ones, then we can define it and say that yoga essentially is the path to enlightenment. It is the path one can take to enlightenment. It is the path to realizing our true nature as the all-pervading consciousness. It is also the path of uniting our individual consciousness with the universal consciousness. However you want to look at it, the perspective is simply an individual thing, but ultimately it is to arrive at the main conclusion that we are the universal consciousness. So, if that is the main goal, there is not just one path that will take us there. In fact, there are many different paths that can take us there. Lord Krishna in the Gita has actually outlined them for us in detail, and today we are going to be discussing the 4 main types of yoga, and you will be able to see that you can actually pick a path that suits your personality and your temperament. So what that means is that different people have different personalities, different strengths and weaknesses, and based on that you can choose a path to make the chance of your success much higher, essentially. And that is the beauty of this. There is no one way. There are 4 main ways, as we'll discuss today, and in these 4 main ways there are millions of different ways. You can say there are as many ways as there are people in existence, because each one is unique, okay? But let's go and understand the essence of these different paths. So first, listing the different types of yoga, you have Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Gyana Yoga, and Raja Yoga. And then within Raja Yoga, you have Hatha Yoga, okay? So Bhakti is the path of love. Karma is the path of selfless service. Gyana Yoga is the path of wisdom. And Raja Yoga, or the royal path, is the path of meditation. And then you have Hatha Yoga, which is the path of the physical body. This is where the physical yoga that we know today actually comes from, okay? So another way to look at this, right? If we apply another filter on this, Bhakti, the part of love, we are using our heart to practice this. So if somebody is quite, of an emotional temperament, they are driven by their emotions, this is a great path for them. In Karma Yoga, it is our actions that are taking charge. So if you are somebody that is very, let's say, hardworking, if you are somebody that is very extroverted, doing a lot of actions, then this can be your path or your main path. Gyana Yoga, wisdom, we are using our intellect essentially. So if you are somebody who is an intellectual, you love to inquire into things, then this is a path for you. Raja Yoga is the path of meditation, and here we use our mind. So if you are somebody that essentially has a very strong mind, if you say that from today I'm not going to drink alcohol anymore, and that becomes truth, you do not drink alcohol, for the rest of your life, it means your mind is very strong. This can be the main path for you. And Hatha Yoga, the path of the physical body, here we are using the body. So if you are somebody that is essentially very athletic, then this can be a main path that you take. So this is, again, this is not set in stone. So it doesn't mean that, if you are very emotional, you have to take the path of bhakti. That's not what it's saying. But it's giving you a general idea, okay? So let's go into the definitions of these, and it will make a lot more sense, okay? So in Bhakti Yoga, the path of love, essentially. So here what is happening is, it is actually a path of trying to merge. So you are saying that I am a separate individual entity, and there is the universal consciousness. And the universal consciousness is in the form of a personal God that you have. So this could be your Rama, your Krishna, your Allah, or Jesus. And what you are saying here is that you are directing all your love toward this deity through means of worship, prayer, singing, bhajan, kirtan, japa, meditation, whatever it may be. But at the same time, you are realizing that this deity that I'm praying to, this universal consciousness that I'm praying to, is actually not just a separate entity. It is within all beings. And I need to realize and see all beings as a manifestation of my deity, of my personal God. And that is true bhakti, essentially. You are directing your love to this personal aspect of God, and by realizing that he or she is within all children, all people, or all are his children, you are essentially directing your love toward them as well. So on this path, this is the path of love, complete love and complete surrender. I hope that makes sense. Then you have the path of Karma Yoga, selfless service. So remember what we are trying to do, in the yoga philosophy, we covered that it is because of our ego. This ego is not a bad thing, but the ego is this sense of individuality that keeps us from knowing that we are not individuals. We are the all-pervading consciousness, right? So the ego is very high. So in Karma Yoga, the premise is that because of my ego, because of my sense of individuality, I have become somebody who is very selfish. Anything I do, I'm trying to do it for myself. I'm trying to work for myself, trying to feed myself. I'm trying to become rich myself. Everything is to please an aspect of our body or somebody in our family. This is how we are as human beings. So in Karma Yoga, we are taking the opposite approach. We are saying that through my actions, any action that I do, I am giving up the want of the result or the fruit of that action. And instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my actions an offering to the divine, essentially. So you remove any kind of want from the actions you're doing. You do all your actions as an offering. So in Bhakti Yoga, if you remember, we said that your personal aspect of God, you are seeing him or her in all of humanity, in all creatures, in the entire nature. So through Karma Yoga, you say that all the actions that I will be doing, I will be dedicating as an offering to the divine, essentially. I do not want the fruits of my own actions. And this is something that is very difficult to do, right? It's something that's very difficult to do. But ultimately, if we are able to do it, then we are able to get rid of the ego completely. And as soon as the ego goes, you realize that I am the universal consciousness. I am in you and you are in me. There is actually no separation. That separation was an illusion. So this is the path of Karma Yoga. Then you have Gyana Yoga, which is the path of wisdom, the path of knowledge, essentially. So Gyana Yoga, you are using your intellect, essentially, and you are trying to inquire into the nature of yourself. So if Bhakti is a path of merging the individual with the universal consciousness, then Gyana Yoga is actually the path of realizing that no, I am not separate. I am actually the all-pervading self. All is self. It's realizing this. So the way that this is done is first of all through studying these scriptures, reading the Bhagavad Gita, reading, Vedanta, reading the Upanishads, and really understanding what is the description given of the self. What does it mean that it is all-pervading, that I am that? What does that mean? Soham, what does that mean? And once alongside doing the studying, then you do practices of meditation where, for example, you can inquire into the nature of the self. You may have heard of the who am I meditation. You keep on asking, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And you keep on negating the body. I'm not the body. I'm not the mind. I'm not the intellect. I'm not the prana. I'm not the ego. So what is remaining? When you tear apart everything, when you go past all the layers, what will be remaining is the all-pervading, always shining self. And this is the path of Gyana Yoga, essentially. But remember that this is, although it is a very direct path, it is a path that can be quite dry. It is a path that requires an incredible amount of discipline already, an incredible amount of your ego, not being that big. Because if your ego is prevalent, if your ego is big, and then you start to say that I am divinity, I am God, I am the pure consciousness, this will only make the ego bigger, taking you further away from self-realization. So it's really important to know, where we are before deciding to go all in 100% on that path, okay? And this is why, working with a guru who is practicing that helps, okay? All right, the next one is Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga is, Raja means king. It is the royal path, the path of meditation, essentially. And, if you watch my videos, you've heard of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are the classical text for Raja Yoga, essentially. So here the premise is very simple. Here the premise is that I cannot see or experience my true nature because my mind has too much clutter. The example is given of the lake that has ripples on its surface. You cannot see what lies beneath. But the moment the lake becomes completely still, you can actually see what lies beneath. So just like that, when the mind is scattered, we cannot experience our true nature. But the moment the mind becomes still, then what is within will naturally shine forth, and realization of your true self will occur naturally. So here we're saying that because the mind is very scattered, through meditation, through concentration, I am going to make the mind refined, concentrated, one-pointed, and realize my true nature in this way. Okay? And although not a part of these main four, Hatha Yoga or Hatha Yoga is actually a part of Raja Yoga. You can say that the purpose of this was to prepare the mind, the body for Raja Yoga, essentially. Because think about it like this: to sit in meditation in the correct posture, completely still, without moving, it requires some flexibility. It requires that your body is fit, in good condition, to actually sit for the amount of time you need to sit for meditation. Because we cannot do that, This science has been developed. The yogic postures, the breathing exercises, it is all connected. So here essentially you are working at a very subtle level with the physical body, with the mind, with prana essentially. And what you are trying to do is you are trying to create a complete balance in the system. And in fact, there are many cases where just through Hatha Yoga, through raising the Kundalini, when the Kundalini raises and reaches the topmost chakra, it means that realization has dawned. This is something that is possible, but of course it takes immense hard work, and the lifestyles that we lead today are probably not conducive to having this as your sole path. So this is used as a stepping stone into Raja Yoga. So you first make the body fit, you make the breathing proper, and when this happens, you can then control the mind much easier, essentially. So these two, you can look at them together. But ultimately, now that you have an understanding of the different types of yoga, one thing is really important to understand, that the greatest sages, take Swami Vivekananda, for example, have recommended that we take an integrated approach of all four, not to just practice one alone. And let me give you an idea of why they say that. Okay, so let's say that you say bhakti is my path. I'm going to do just bhakti and nothing else. This has, I'm not saying this always happens, but there is a chance that it can lead to fanaticism of some kind, where you start to believe that the personal aspect of God that you are worshipping is the only reality that there is. And let's say that you are praying to Krishna and somebody else is praying to Allah, for example, right? Different religion. And you may begin to think that, no, this Allah is not, that is either not true, or that is a different entity, or you are not actually able to see that the Krishna that you are praying to is the same Allah that the other person is praying to. Because there is only one reality, right? So if you have knowledge of Gyana, if you have read that all is self, if you have understood that there is only one reality, you can give it any name that you want. You can have a personal God of your choice, but that is just a support essentially for you on the path. It doesn't mean that if somebody else is doing something else, that it's that has less weight or carries less weight. Do you understand? So having an integrated approach where you can focus all of your love on one deity, no problem. But at the same time, knowing that if somebody is praying to a different version of God or a different aspect of God, it is ultimately the same. It is the same supreme that is being prayed to. It is not different. So bhakti, when you are doing bhakti, Gyana is also important, right? And there are many different examples of all of these. Ultimately, they all need to be integrated. They all need to be integrated for us to have the best chance, essentially, right? I'll give you another example, Karma Yoga, right? Karma Yoga, the path of selfless service. So you see so many people that, begin with very, very good intentions, a charitable organization to help others out there. And what begins to happen is that organization grows, and that person goes from serving people on, the streets, or actually physically serving people, to now arranging other things. Now they're trying to arrange meetings with this NGO and that NGO and having international meetings. And all of a sudden, this person has become a charity superstar, and the mind has become completely extroverted. So what was actually supposed to make you, diminish the ego is actually now increasing the ego because your organization has become so big. So it is always important to realize that no matter what path we take, we are taking it for a specific goal. And to reach that goal, the ego needs to be completely demolished, essentially. It needs to be completely demolished. And if any path that you are taking is not leading to this idea of oneness, be it bhakti, be it karma, no matter what it is, then you have gone astray, essentially. And we need to recheck, what it is that your beliefs are, what your practices are, what is leading you to where you are going, essentially. So, okay, that is it for this video. It's meant to be, just an introduction. So I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you for watching. Namaste.